Welcome, everyone, to Your Little Castle Show. In life, everyone has their kind of certain aptitudes, things they kind of enjoy. I'm not a master deck builder by any means, but I'm kind of a connoisseur. Is there such thing as a deck connoisseur? And I've always been, every cabin, every house has always had very nice decks. My dad was a bit of a builder, and we just enjoyed it. Who doesn't want to have a beautiful deck on their house?
I agree. I think everybody should have one.
I would say that would be a good opinion. With that, ladies and gentlemen, there's not too often we get to have so many specialized experts like we have here today. But we've got in the studio Pat and Ben Flynn. They run Top Deck. Pat is the founder and owner, right?
Correct.
President, head guy, and the head draftsman here we've got is your son over here, Ben, right?
Doing a fine job, he is.
Okay. Yeah, no, I've seen the work. We're going to show some pictures of everything that you guys have done, and as much as we can. There's so much work you've got out there that looks beautiful, but exciting. Well, guys, thanks for coming in and visiting with us here on the Your Little Castle Show.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us on.
Yes,
all right.
Sir.
Yeah. With that, let's get into it. I'm going to do a little shout out to our sponsors, but it's great having Brooke Dubman, and I know that Brooke enjoys a nice. You got to have everybody needs a nice deck on a big house, and I've been to Brooke's house, but Carroll House Furniture, because you like nice things in your little castle, because we all are trying to build those castles. So that's what we did there. Brooke kind of likes that, and you got to have a beautiful deck if you're going to do that. So with that, I'm going to put up. You guys have a dynamite looking website, and you have an awesome Facebook page, and putting both of those up on the TV walls behind us to show off for everybody here. All right, guys, let's get into this, because I like I said, I've an affinity for decks and making them cool and composite and all the cool things, all the things that we think we know. Watch out for the do-it-yourselfers. We always warn about those guys.
Not as many nowadays as there used to be.
But yeah, it gets kind of expensive, especially if you don't know what you're doing, and you got to get permits and all the stuff that goes into that. Tell me, Pat, why did you decide to get into the deck building business over 20 years ago now?
Actually, Top Deck's over 20 years. I've been building decks for 40 years.
Yeah, so you've been in the business for 40. Okay.
So I had two other companies prior to this.
Okay.
Yep. And then we moved over to Illinois and started Top Deck in 2002.
All right. Well, then tell me then, why did you decide to get into this? What was it that led you here?
Being self-employed, I think, drew me into it. Okay. And then building things. Just like building.
Okay.
Started building swimming pools, and before I knew it, we were putting them around the pool, putting decks around the pools, and then it grew into putting them on the houses.
Yeah, that seems to be how many people don't have a deck on their house, especially if a walkout. You've got a second floor.
You're stuck.
You're stuck. You're going to have to. When are you going to just jump out the back? I mean, I remember when I moved into my first house, there was no deck there for a number of months.
Right.
You just had that little rail that went right up against the wall. You could peek out there. You could open the door, but you couldn't step out anywhere. It's like, man, I got to get a deck put out here. So we.
For sure. It's illegal now.
Is it?
In a lot of places. Not,
oh, wow.
Certain places.
Now, what part are you saying?
Shouldn't say illegal, but the insurance companies are frown on it. And then I guess there's some municipalities that Plano won't let you do that. That house is done for occupancy. That deck's got to be done, but not everywhere.
Interesting. I hadn't heard that. But yeah, I guess it's a matter of people then were potentially falling off the deck because it's a little.
I'm sure hazard. Yeah, there's
Okay.
a potential hazard.
All right.
Even though you lock the door. Anyway.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. Well, an exciting industry to get into. And then your son has joined you here. Draftsman is the title. I like that. So, Ben, tell me, why did you decide you wanted to get into this and join your dad?
Well, it's definitely a all hands on deck sort of business. It's very close knit. Can see it's mostly just us and a few other people. My dad's the owner here, and then my mother is also, in the office with me, and my stepbrother and his wife are also in the business, and we are all in to help succeed and make some very cool and interesting products.
Well, that's neat. When you get the whole family involved. I mean, my family, a little bit of education, but I was a was the stranger? I ran off to do the computer side of the world, but they had a learning center. It was neat when they all worked together, and you could see they just built the synergy. And I would come in and set the computers up for them. But when you have a whole team like you have here, and Matt is he's our assistant producer over here for the first show, by the way, and he's a big baseball fan. We'll tell you what team he likes best later. And we like those guys too. They help the Cardinals a lot. But the whole family really gets to engage here, and does that make it a little bit? I would imagine as a family member, you get to hold people a little bit more accountable, right? And so you can lean on them a little. Hey, wait a minute, mom, dad, son.
For sure, and it's a blessing. You get separated, so if you can grow up together, once they grow up and have a family, you don't see them half the time. So we're able to work together and you stay close, and for sure it's a blessing.
Well, tell me, was there a particular turning point as you started this? I would imagine you with 40 years in the industry, when did you first decide this is when you wanted to make it the full-time gig? And then I guess years later you said, I'm going to start my own company.
Yeah, shortly after I got married, I went back into business. And at that point, we built a lot of nice decks. I'd build anything. I'd build them around. Customer wanted it, we'd build it or design it. I'd build it however. We got to the point where the quality of the deck suffered once they took arsenic out of the treated pine about 2006. By 2015, we had customers calling us with rotting plastic decks. So your frame was rotting underneath, so the outside could look great, but the structure holding up the deck was rotting. So at that point, we knew we had a problem. Customers were calling, and we ended up developing product that fixed that. So we make what we call a rain shed deck board, and what that does is simply takes the water off the top of the deck, and you can put a gutter on the side of the deck or just let it fall into the yard, but it keeps your wooden frame dry. So without the arsenic in the treated lumber, if it doesn't get wet, it's not going to hurt it.
There you go. So, and I talked about that. Why did they decide? I guess arsenic historically is a poison, right?
Correct.
There's the arsenic in old lace. Is that on old?
Right. The arsenic in the water,
But that stuff, it was bad for you. It can kill people.
I believe it was the Environmental Protection Agency that spoke with all of the lumber manufacturers and convinced them to remove it. What's really the problem, I believe, is runoff. It'll get all wet, and all that arsenic will wash off of the deck, and it would soak into the ground, and it would get into the rainwater, and suddenly you have a dangerous amount of water in all the surrounding ponds and rivers and.
Right.
Yeah, that's what we talk about. Arsenic as something that is deadly. You don't want a lot of that going into the environment. So that makes sense. I thought it was just a matter of they just didn't like it anymore, but the rain would absorb and help it go into the system.
Correct.
And now you've got a big problem.
Right.
And so, but the arsenic was the agent that I guess helped the wood to sustain so it wouldn't deteriorate. Well, tell me.
Correct.
So that's missing now.
Yeah, so the fungus wouldn't grow. With the arsenic in it, the fungus wouldn't grow.
Okay.
So the fungus is ultimately what eats the wood.
I got you. Okay.
You can look at an old piece of firewood and it's got the white fungus growing on it. It's deteriorating because it's been down at the bottom.
Okay.
Same thing with a wooden frame or wooden deck.
Interesting. So fungus is bad. I mean, you see it in the green algae looking stuff. Is that kind of
so? Not as much the green algae. You start seeing white fungus or black. If you get the combination, once it gets to the point where you start seeing the white fungus, it's over.
This is going to be a bad thing for your
deck.
For your deck.
And that's it. People buying a plastic deck, they're thinking, "Oh, well, I'm good for life." Well, that's where you've got to be aware that there's problems. So
now, when you say plastic deck, and why would the problems be there? Is it because that composite a lot of times is a mixture of wood and plastic, or is it because they're using the supports are all?
So the supports are you still have a treated structure on 90-something% of all decks, and plastic or composite. Composites, I should just say composite. Composite is usually a mixture of wood and plastic that develop your composite board, but there's other mixtures that can make a composite board. But that being said, all them composites, whether they have plastic and wood in them or all plastic, are built on a treated frame. And then you're trying to protect that treated frame. So until 2006, 2008, it wasn't a problem. The treated lumber was very reliable. But by 2015, customers started calling me with problems.
So it had been treated, but not treated with arsenic anymore.
Correct.
And so that big
Correct. The new
change
treatment just
It's
doesn't
not
add
as
up.
effective.
And then they have younger trees now too. So that's another big part of the problem.
Okay.
The trees are much slower. They're fast growth. So you don't have the old growth trees anymore. So, and you can look in a board and you can see a 2x4 that used to have 30 years in a 2x4.
Right.
It might have 4.
Okay.
So you can see it in your growth rings.
Yeah.
So it's a sponge. Water goes in, water goes out. It takes some of the chemical with it.
Okay. And if there's less rings, there's more absorption for that, and it
Correct.
deteriorates more quickly.
The boards even lost their strength because of that. They're not near as strong as they used to be.
Okay. So does each year an annual thing that sheds and the bark or whatever, but that essentially creates like a rib kind of thing. Is that what it is? And
Correct.
Another barrier to make that wood stronger.
Yep. And you got all them rings, so it's just denser, harder, denser. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Ben, as a draftsman, somebody who's dealing with this, you have to inform your clients about these changes, these updates that need to be made, and why this is so important. And it leads to where you guys are really some innovators, right? With your what's it called again? Rain
Shed.
shed deck board. Yeah, that stuff is revolutionary, and you guys are the ones who developed this.
So there are other rain shed boards, or I should say, watershed boards. Rain shed, just what we've adopted a name for it.
Okay.
There are other boards that are hollow. We're the first one with a solid board.
Okay.
So we actually have to cut the board to the desired shape, and then we go through other measures to make it work. Because now we're shedding water off the top, so we do a process what I call frame shaping. So we shape the frame of the deck so that the water properly flows off the deck. Otherwise, your standard shape, it would hold water, and you'd end up with a pool. You'd end up with water holding out on your deck.
I understand.
And you don't want
Now,
that.
what I like to say is that you have a smart deck board, so that requires a smart frame.
Okay. Gotcha.
It's something where it's not just the deck board that needs to change along with this system here. You need to have, it all needs to be a cohesive thing that you're putting together. And what's so important is making sure as much water gets transported away
Right.
as possible, as quickly as possible.
Yeah, water is bad in just about any situation.
Right.
Nobody's like, hey, man, you got a house, let's put some more water on it. That's going to make things better. So the same is true for decking. And even if it's treated, and now the treating has obviously been changed. And so you guys have really come up with a solution for that is what it boils down to.
For sure. It was an old deck guru years ago. He said the 3 biggest problems with decks are water, water, and water. It's like, yeah, you're right. So it's still it's still the case.
Yeah, and it's water. We know we had a few roofing experts on the show. They talk about once water gets inside the house, it causes mold
Right.
and all kinds of other problems. Same thing once you've got that penetrate, especially when we're talking about the supports. And that's when we were talking a bit in the pregame. We call it pregame discussion, right?
Mm-hmm.
That post I have on my deck, I can show you a picture of it, but it just started to bow and pieces were coming out of it. And you could see where the round part, where the next layer, they cut it square, obviously, but that's because water, I guess, ultimately had a lot to do with that and causes those things to fail.
And then the bowings, the younger trees, goes back to the younger tree. Your old growth boards, you cut old growth lumber, it's going to stay straight. The new growth lumber, it warps and
Really?
yeah.
Okay.
It's not as stable.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is why you hire experts. And I mean, I'm Dad would say, be careful. You might double your knowledge, Carter, with all that you learn when you talk to somebody who you need to specialize in something. My dad emphasized that as a kid, and you better be good at what you do. Better know what you're talking about. And you guys take it to another level because you guys are the ones actually resolving a big problem that some people may not even realize. They just got their deck. Like, how long does the deck last these days if they just did it the old conventional way? And they're going to start seeing these problems in 2 or 3, 4, 5 years, and then these decks are supposed to last 30 years, but that's not happening.
Correct. And then even so, your big manufacturers about 4 years ago started producing tape and recommending you put tape all over the framing before you put your composite boards down. So they realize it's a problem now. But yeah, we've been working on it we developed the rain shed board 9 years ago. So we've been keeping our wooden frames dry for 9 years now. And then our staircases we all build with composite and aluminum plate, so we basically build a deck where no wood gets wet. So
There you go. So if you can keep that water from hitting the deck, things are going to last a lot longer. That's the bottom line.
for sure.
And so if you've got
For
a
sure.
rain shed product that'll address that and flow that water away, keep it from getting wet, then you've got something that's going to last. That's what we're looking for.
That's what we're telling the customer. That's what the customer's expecting.
Yeah.
They're buying a composite deck. That's right in their brain. Okay, we're going to spend this extra money, but we're expecting it to last in return.
I gotcha.
So that's
Okay.
what we do.
All right, Ben, that's what you have to help people understand. That's part of the design that goes into what you put together when you design a deck for somebody. As the draftsman, is that your main task, is to make sure this thing is all equipped and set up correctly so that water does not impact it as easily?
Yep, and that's something where it goes back into how you need to have this smart frame,
Okay.
because we do have to have, additional framing members. We've devised different ways we have a few different options where we have something where we'll put extra deck boards on something that will shape the frame in order to have that curve, to get the water to find the lowest spot every single time. And another thing that we do is that we have sort of a modular version of everything, where we will build off-site and we construct it perfect every single time to where it is this very precise shape. And so we can then put that together off-site, then we can take it on-site, and it'll be perfect every time, so long as the installer has the right elevation of all of the
Okay.
structural members.
Yeah, so essentially that's being prefabricated at your guys' facility, put together with no, like when I'm putting together any kind of structure in my backyard, yeah, my ground's not level, the settings, I'm going to be missing a lot of the professional components I need to make sure I put a system together. So you're assembling it all prior and then bringing it out there. It makes it a lot easier to assemble it correctly, I guess.
Yes, the amount of time that it takes to do something like that is, well, quite a lot less.
Okay.
A lot of people are surprised about how little time we actually take being at their house, which, is nice that you don't have, a week where
Right.
you step off of your kitchen patio and you
Right.
fall, 8 feet.
Yeah. I thought they had this thing going. It's supposed to be
Right.
finished, but you guys have a system there. We're going to show some pictures about that too as we continue here. But tell me, what is it? Again, I'll ask each one of you to start with you, Pat. What is it about your business that fuels your passion for what you do? I mean, somebody that's done this for 40 years, you've got to have this ingrained in your blood.
So I'm not the smartest guy, but I know a lot about decks. Probably the innovative part of it is what I like. So that's probably what pushed me into doing it too. The design, and because like I said, originally I built, I like to build the neat stuff. We build them around, or like I said, whatever a customer wanted, we do all that. And a few years later, people stop taking care of them, and you're like, it's not worth the money that you're spending putting into a deck, doing all this fancy stuff to make it look cool, and then it deteriorates. So I got more into the quality of the deck. So now I do more what we call production decks, what 99% of the people have on their home. It's a high functional deck. It's got, the base deck, a staircase to grade, but it doesn't have all the turns and the covers and a lot of the things that, maybe a high-end deck would have. So, but it's what most people want. So we've taken that and we've just perfected that to where we can do what I call, like I said, more production deck, where we can come in, do it fairly quickly, fairly efficiently, and at a quality that'll be better than the others. But because of our ability to manufacture half the deck off-site, we can produce it at a similar cost.
Yeah, I'd never seen that. I'm just as I've seen decks getting built historically, you end up with a bunch of 2 by 10, 2 by 12 by 16, right? And those are the joists. A lot of times you got to haul those things around, and those stack up and weigh, what are those, 50, 60 pounds each, and then you got to put those up. But you've got that all. I want to show these pictures up here. We'll get to that in just a second here. First, I want to show off your reviews. You guys have some incredible reviews. A lot of people really appreciate what you guys have done, and then I'm going to show some of your guys' work too. So with that, we'll do our wide angle shot here. Everybody's in the picture now, and but put up on the wall some of those reviews. We can see here. This is your Google reviews. You've got a 5.0 there, and then we've got the BBB, your A plus. And when you earn that A plus, that means you've done a lot of good work to help people too. No complaints. That's good. I'm going to grab just a review or two off of what we've got here. But a lot of people are adding their own pictures to the reviews to show off what the work that you guys have done. Professionalism, punctuality, quality, responsiveness, value. There's a lot that people appreciate there.
Now that right there, that was the first modular deck, or one of the first ones right there, and we did it pretty good the first time. It's about the same, quite close to how it was before. Doing it right now as opposed to last year when we really first started getting into it.
Cool. All right. Good example. And these guys really appreciated what you guys talked about here, because they said, we cannot say enough good things about Pat. Top deck, our deck and patio they built. Well, we had it done over 6 years ago, and it still looks brand new today. Top deck, custom deck, not a leak water underneath. It's because of the rain shed, right?
Right.
So our outdoor furniture and electronics, I guess everybody's got their phones, right? Stay dry for years, and the best choice we could have made to have our deck built with top deck. All right.
Yeah, a lot of people start using their bottoms of their deck more because they're dry. So they'll put their patio below there and able to use that as a roof cover. And one customer's like, yeah, we use the top and earlier in the morning, and then by afternoon we're down underneath our deck. They got fire pits on the top and on the bottom.
Okay.
Anyway, gives you availability to use the bottom.
Yeah, you can see where these decks have got such big span that there's plenty of room underneath. There's just one example we'll put up on the wall there.
One of the fantastic things about these production decks is that aside from maybe the shape is a little simpler, but there is no real way to tell that this is something that is more standardized, is something that is almost off the shelf in a way, as opposed to something more custom.
Okay, so you're getting to be able to make this thing very systematized, the way things are getting built. I'm just scrolling through a couple of the pictures here. Stop me on one you would like to talk about, because we've got a ton of beautiful pictures here. And this one catches my attention a little bit. What kind of a decking system is that? It's on the wall there.
So what we do that's fairly unique, it's not totally unique, but we still work with what we call plastic lumber. So we start with raw lumber. Okay. 2x4s, 2x2s, 4x4s, all out of composite. Our composite is 80% plastic and 20% mineral. And so there's nothing organic. So it's a little higher cost than the wood plastic composites. But we buy it in raw board farm. Most of your deck builders are going to buy deck boards from one of your bigger manufacturers, and then they're going to buy in boxed rails, aluminum or possibly capped composite. So they'll start with the boxes of rails. They'll cut them down to fit. We actually start with raw lumber, and then we, at our facility, will cut it, shape it. We'll manufacture the staircases, the rail systems, even the full deck modules. So we do things quite a bit different than anybody.
And this stuff feels that quality. You can feel that quality when you hold on to the rail, or you walk down the steps, or you just walk across the surface. A lot of these composites, you'll stand up on that deck and you can feel as you're walking across it or holding a rail that that's hollow. You can feel that it's hollow. It feels a little cheap,
Right.
And we're the only solid rail system. Pretty
I
much,
haven't-
almost
I haven't
all the
seen
other ones
solid
will be
rail
a hollow.
system in a long time, unless you
Right.
got just I had the old classic pine, treated pine, even
Right.
on my old deck. That's the
Right.
last time I saw a solid rail system. But you're saying
Right.
your systems are all solid.
Correct. Whereas most of you, and you're right, most of your box rails are going to be hollow. Which, you know, and a lot of the hollow stuff is fine. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just, it's what I've chose to use and do because I like the feel of it. And it has a different look, you know, and some people are, most of our customers are like it. So,
Well, I've noticed on my own deck a little bit of the sagging that comes across. If you've got an 8-foot span, you have to put a little shim up in the middle. Is that because the hollow is just not as strong?
well, so no, well, actually, your solids can have more sag issues. They're going to be more. They're going to have more flex to them. So you actually do have to support them.
Okay.
You'll have what we call crush blocks in the rail system. The plastic lumbers are very similar to softwood.
This might be a good picture here.
Okay.
So like a pine. Yeah, so you can see there the crush blocks under the middle of each span. If that was wood 2x4s, you
gotcha.
wouldn't need that.
Gotcha.
If a lot of hollow rails wouldn't need that.
Okay.
But your solid lumber, even if steel, same way. You took a solid chunk of steel, well, that's not going to span near as far without sagging as a hollow piece of steel would. Same scenario. So the plastic lumber is very similar in almost all your mechanical properties is wood, is a soft wood, except the flexibility of it. The modulus of elasticity is much greater. So
Okay.
in fact, and if you scroll down the field, you'll see where we build what we call a swooshula, made out of the plastic lumber.
Okay.
And we take that,
Which one?
so yeah, there's one there. See this one up to the, yeah, that's the inside of it. If you go all the way to the left, you can see it further away. You see how there you go. So that we take, those are 4x3s, and that's actually structural plastic lumber on that. That has fiberglass infused into the boards. And that allows us to basically, I call it drape it. We'll drape the plastic lumber to provide basically what we call a swooshula.
Okay.
So we have a patent on that shape and design, and it allows us to build with that material without using very heavy timbers. So it would cost a lot more if you were to do that same material and keep it straight and flat. So
Okay.
by using the natural sag or flex of the material, more like the flex of the material, it turns it into that and gives you a lower cost option to a stiffer brother.
Wow, ladies and gentlemen, we've covered a lot here. We're already through the first half hour with our experts here. We've got a lot more to talk about. Thanks to Ben for joining us. We're going to bring on your brother, Matt, here in just a minute, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this as we continue to get into some of the experts. And we're going to talk about the mistakes that people make. You can imagine when you're building a $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 deck, that can get costly. Stay tuned for more, everybody.